and it means that your audio lines are muted, but we won't keep it that way through the whole hour. We'll be having a discussion in the last 20 minutes, and we'll have everybody off mute and encourage you to join in the discussion. It's a real opportunity to take the hour to ask some tough questions and really bring your ideas to the fore. So we're really excited about that part of today. We'll be jumping around in our slides a little bit today. We're doing this webinar in a slightly different format. We've got some great panelists, and we'll be doing a moderated conversation. And then we have some slides that will be put up as kind of a support to that, and we'll be using our webcam. So during the first piece, the panel discussion, you're welcome to send some questions in or ask questions. And you can either do this by raising your hand, and you can see here on the slide how to do that. You just click on that button, your hand will go up, and then we'll be able to call on you, and you can ask your question verbally. And you can also send in questions during that period through the questions pane in the control panel. And you can see that here on the next slide, which is coming up. And it's just here, the questions pane there. You can type in questions and send them in. So the Public Health Alliance of Southern California, just wanted to take a minute to introduce the organization for those of you who aren't familiar with it. We're an alliance of 9 local health departments in the Southern California area, covering about 60% of the total population. And the mission of our organization is that all Southern California communities are healthy, vibrant, and sustainable places to live, work, and play. We collaborate on some key policy issues, and water is a new one to us this year, and we're really excited to be delving into this issue with our colleagues in public health departments and other agencies around California. So if at any time you experience any technical difficulties, you can feel free to send a question to one of our staff, or you can call GoToWebinar at the number listed in your control pane. So I also just wanted to take a moment to introduce Holly Calhoun, who's here at the controls with me today. And she is our local food systems working group coordinator. And Tracy Delaney is our executive director. So I'd love to just take a moment to do a couple of quick polls to see who's on the call with us today. So if you can take just a minute, we're going to pull up a poll here and give you a chance to let us know where you're from. So the first poll is what sector do you work? So if you could just take a moment and click on one of these selections, that would be great. Just give us an idea of who's on the call today. Okay, great. Holly, do you want to go ahead and wrap that poll up, and we'll take a look at the results? Great. So 75% of our callers today are in environmental health. We've got 13% from food policy councils and 13% from other non-governmental organizations. So that's great. And then just to get a sense of our geography, our second poll question is asking you what part of the state you're calling in from today. We'll take about 30 seconds to do that. You can go ahead and click your selection there. That would be great. Just about 10 more seconds. Great, so let's take a look at our results here. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a pretty good spread from most of the state. So that's wonderful. Thanks so much for sending that in. Great, so without further ado, I wanted to introduce our co-host this morning, Angelo Bellomo, who's the Director of Environmental Health for Los Angeles County, and has been a really important thought partner for us and leader in the field. I'm really honored to have him on today to introduce our speakers and set the tone for our session. So welcome, Angelo. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment just to unmute you here and give you the floor. One sec. Great. Welcome, Angelo.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks to Tracy and all the colleagues there at PHA. I also wanted to thank my colleagues in environmental health for joining us this morning. Before we meet our speakers, I'm going to take just a few minutes to set some context for our discussion. Our goal in this session is to identify how those of us in environmental health jurisdictions can best support the development of alternative water sources. And specifically for this morning, it's really about the capture and use of rainwater and stormwater. Now, historically, environmental health jurisdictions and our colleagues in public health are not the driving forces behind the development of alternative water. But the question for us to be thinking about this morning as we go through this discussion is how we can assist the key stakeholders that are the driving force. The water municipalities and the private water companies, the public interest groups and other NGOs that are acting in the public interest, and of course, the state and local regulators. Now, there's three key points that I would like to make. The first one is that we all have to recognize that what we are calling now a water crisis is not rooted in the current drought. The water system that is serving our region was created, some 80 years ago. It's highly dependent on imported water from Northern California and the Colorado River. So our water system is based on using water we really do not have here in the region. It's fundamentally unsustainable. And that is the real crisis that we're dealing with. This is a difficult concept for many to understand because as we developed here in the Southland, and this water was made available to us, we tended to act as if it was ours and would be ours always. And I think this is the reason why we call this a fundamental problem in sustainability. And it's not unlike the sustainability issues we're dealing with in energy production or in the food system or in the way we manage our waste. So we have to work, in this case, toward a sustainable water system, and that means greater reliance on water within our region and under our control. So the second point is that in order for us to achieve sustainable water, we have to develop sources within the region, and this involves work on several fronts. I think initially those of us in environmental health see our role in a couple of areas. The principal ones are the restoration and continued protection of groundwater supplies, the use of gray water, recycled water, and the subject of this morning's discussion, the capture and use of rainwater and stormwater, and of course, whatever conservation efforts that we've got underway. Now, the third point is that in order to get there, there really needs to be a well-coordinated effort on the part of many. The water municipalities and water companies, as I mentioned, the state and local water regulators, and those other groups that are acting in the public interest. So we know where we need to go, but there are clearly barriers that all of us have bumped into as we're trying to get there. Some of them are technological, but I really think there's a lot of promising solutions there, so that's not limiting on us. Some of them are regulatory, and I think we're primed for changes, continued changes in the regulatory framework that will facilitate this transition that we need to make. Some of them that are spoken about are funding limitations, but again, that's another one that I really believe this crisis is well recognized now, and funding, at least for the time being, may not be the limitation. So the last two that I really think are big problems for us are institutional barriers, the beliefs and attitudes of many of us who have been regulating water for the right reasons. We're trying to protect our valuable water resources, and anything that basically introduces a different concept to us as regulators, we're hesitant. This isn't the case in many of the jurisdictions. Several of you who are on the call today, I think we get it as environmental health professionals that our public health for the people that we're serving really depends as much on our ability to develop alternative water supplies as it does on our continued protection of the water supplies we have. And then on public support, we have a major role to play in terms of educating the public on the urgency. So what I'd like to do is just briefly mention the flow of our session this morning. And essentially, this is a highly interactive session. That's what we're hoping for. And we'll be talking with our guests, and we invite each of you to kick out questions throughout the discussion. At the end of our interaction with the guests, we will move into a group discussion for the remaining portion of our session. And again, we encourage everyone to join in the conversation at that time. So let me introduce our speakers. First, we have Edith De Guzman, and Edith is Director of Research at Tree People. This is an extraordinary organization that most of you may know about, but if you're outside the region, maybe you're less familiar with it. But it was founded by Andy Lipkiss, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. Andy's been kicking around a long time. Edith has been with Tree People since 2003, and her work centers on identifying the efficacy, benefits, and applicability of various approaches to achieving urban sustainability. Several of us in environmental health have had the pleasure of interacting with Edith recently, and we find her to be extremely progressive in her thinking and ever present to encourage all stakeholders to move forward in the interests of the public. Edith received her master's in urban planning from UCLA and her bachelor's in history and art history also from UCLA. Our second panelist is Regina Hirsch. After previous assignments that Regina had with the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board and the Morro Bay Natural Estuary Program, Regina moved to the Sierras and opened Mountain Sage Nursery and Sierra Watershed Progressive. Her work focuses on the on-site water best management practices aimed at rehydrating watersheds. Since 2010, Sierra Watershed Progressive has helped design and implement a series of projects which involve the restoration of 500 acres of habitat and the annual reuse of 1.3 million gallons of rainwater, 2.2 million gallons of stormwater, and almost 5 million gallons of gray water. Regina is a co-founder and steering committee member of the California Decentralized Water Policy Council and provides classroom training on on-site water conservation for the California On-Site Water Association, for the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health, thank you for that, and the UC Cooperative Extension. Okay, I'm going to hand this back over to Katie at this point.
Great, thank you, Angelo, so much for that really inspiring and important introduction and framing for today's session. And thanks so much, Edith and Regina, for joining us. So we're going to spend the next half hour just having a conversation and hearing more from you about your work and about some of the ideas you have to bring forward. So maybe we'll just get started. I'd love to just hear a little bit more from each of you about your work, kind of where you sit in the system, and maybe what your core passion is that's driving you in your work. So maybe we'll start with you, Edith.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting Tree People to be here today. This is a very important topic, and we're thrilled to be part of the discussion and helping shape the future of the use of rainwater and stormwater in California. As Angelo mentioned, Tree People has been around some time. We were founded in 1973 by Andy Lipkiss, who, by the way, sends his regards and wishes very much that he was in my seat this morning, but he's away doing other important things. Tree People's mission is to inspire, engage, and support the people of Los Angeles and around the world to take personal responsibility for the urban environment, making it safe, healthy, fun, and sustainable, and to share the process as a model for the world. In terms of the work that we do, we have about 50 staff who are engaged in a variety of different programs. We started out as primarily a grassroots organization, and that was probably the first 20 years of our work. And the activities around that are primarily environmental education and urban and wildland forestry. But we realized that doing work at the grassroots was only as good as what would be possible, you know, sort of the absence of a glass ceiling to establish as much progressive action as possible. And we were seeing that there were some glass ceilings that were being hit there. So we also do a great deal of work in research and policy, which you will hear quite a bit more about throughout this call. And in terms of my work, I do sit primarily in the latter part that I just described, really the intersection of research and policy. But we see our unique value in bringing those two sort of bottom-up and top-down sectors together. So it's really that nexus that excites our work and keeps us going.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Regina? What gets you up out of bed in the morning, and where do you sit in the system?
Well, typically, Sierra Watershed Progressive, we're aiming at looking at demonstration projects to shift the paradigm. So we're working in more and more commercial, public, high demonstration, wide demographic use areas to do on-site water best management practices. So we can find out what's working, what's not working, and then we have a long-term monitoring protocol for each of those. And then secondly, what drives us is really a rehydration of the watershed. And so looking at where we can get actual wet water back into riparian corridors and in-stream flow, where we can connect those projects, say with a direct conservation of water that would affect an in-stream flow diversion, is our secondary driving force. So if we can overlay those two projects together, those two project types, we can see quite a bit of in-stream flow success for fisheries and rehydration of our riparian areas pretty quickly. So that's what we're starting to try to look at in a more productive way. Yeah. So, and then also, yeah, I think that's
great. Well, Regina, you mentioned a shifting paradigm, and we're actually seeing, I think, right now, water managers and regulators, and you know, I think all of us really shifting the way we look at water systems. That the changing water cycle is really driving us to look deeper and think differently. And I'm just curious. I'd love to ask both of you, but we'll start with you, Regina. What do you think are maybe some of the core principles or guiding ideas that you think should be driving us as we seek to capture the water that falls from the sky and use it?
Right, well, I guess the obvious one from my previous answer is watershed process. And we should keep that as we are driven by pipe sheds and over allocations, where we can try to double up on multifunction for a watershed process is probably one of the top ones. Also looking at energy uses and an actual water budget would be one of the other top guiding principles. And then last but not least, looking at those contaminants of emerging concern that are in our wastewaters, collected, what they're finding even in stormwater coming off some of our wastewaters and combining is also part of our guiding principles. Great,
thank you. How about you, Edith? What's on your mind?
I like how Regina answered that, and I would add just a couple of things from the perspective of public engagement, because we do so much of our work is in environmental education and in community engagement, that I see a guiding principle as being the notion that we really have to foster a sense of place, particularly in Southern California, because we still have a perception that I think is being shifted now with the extreme drought that we're in, but that it's permissible to have green lawns and, you know, import the concept of an English garden in a place that is not able to support that. At the same time, there's also the misconception that Southern California is a desert, and certainly there are parts of Southern California that are desert, but Los Angeles is not a desert. So we live somewhere in between those two extremes, the English garden and, you know, the xeriscape, desert garden, so to speak. And we have found that when you connect people to what their place actually is and what natural resources it can sustain and provide, that there's sort of a moment of clicking and understanding that we have to respect those boundaries. And we find it to be a very enriching experience to actually connect to what the land can provide naturally.
Nice. Well, you're both out there doing a lot of implementation and really kind of at the cutting edge of some of these approaches. And I'd love if you could both just share a few maybe cutting edge approaches or technologies that you're seeing out there that you think are emerging and really exciting in terms of their potential to help us, capture and reuse water more effectively. Regina?
Well, I'd say cutting edge is maybe a qualifier here, but I'd say there's always the indoor reuse, and I think no matter how we do indoor reuse, it's all cutting edge in California at this point, because there's so little being done. And so any of the indoor reuse, mainly to laundry systems and different plumbing configurations, really is cutting edge, but also the monitoring systems for those are what I think is truly cutting edge that we've been working on. Also, cutting edge for low technology, trying to conserve that energy budget and put in appropriate systems that really don't require that energy budget is, to me, as much cutting edge as a high technical system. So there's a lot of low technology systems that are still appropriate, that are still being devised and innovated, that I think we need to still look to and not always look to the higher energy use systems.
Can you give us an example of one of those technologies?
Sure. I'd say there's some earthworks that were done. We installed over at the National Guard base on the California Conservation Corps lease in San Luis Obispo, and there's a 3-acre stormwater project that was done with just innovative earthwork systems and drainage patterns, constructed wetlands and bathymetry that really did, we were monitoring the heavy metal uptake and also phytoremediation and water infiltration through pressure transducers. So that's all low technology but innovative. It was done with really a shovel and a crew of people and a low cost and low maintenance per gallon of water conserved.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful to give a picture of what you're talking about. How about you, Edith? What are you seeing out there?
Sure. I guess in addition to what Regina has shared, which I agree with, in Southern California, I have to say that unfortunately, rainwater harvesting in anything larger than a rain barrel is still cutting edge. So, I mean, certainly the technology is not cutting edge. The technology is hundreds, if not thousands of years old. But certainly in terms of, how many people are actually out there doing it, we would like to see a lot more, and we would like it to become more mainstream than it currently is. But in terms of technology, one of the cutting edge things that we're actually beginning to test out is the notion of I guess bridging the very distributed nature of rainwater harvesting, and with a very centralized controlled water systems of the 20th century. So let me explain what I mean by that. We are beginning to test out the idea of remote controlling rainwater harvesting systems so that they can be monitored and in some cases even maintained or operated remotely, not essentially allowing the homeowner or the resident or the business to have control on the local scale, but also allowing agencies to count that system as part of the larger network within their jurisdiction. So it's literally, the concept is literally to have remote controlling capabilities so that you can create that network. And the idea is for essentially a flood control agency would be able to determine that within a system of, let's say, 10,000 or 100,000 cisterns out there, there's a certain amount of capacity within that, because you can essentially monitor what the available capacity is. And if you know that there's a significant storm coming up tomorrow and you have a high degree of certainty that that's going to happen, you can actually release some of the water in those cisterns as a first flush, so that addresses both a flood control function as well as a water quality function. So that's an example of the kind of thing that we're interested in testing there. And of course, it will be very interesting to see how that all actually works out. It's not so much a technical challenge as it is a human challenge, I think, to see how we work out the balance between control at the local scale and at the jurisdictional scale.
Yes, and so those challenges sound very real, but both of what you're both talking about is very exciting, and I'm just curious if in the work that you've done so far, as well as these new ideas that you're thinking about for the future, what kind of barriers are you facing in implementing these solutions? And I'm sure they're different to some degree for each technology or each type of solution, but are you seeing any common patterns or key barriers that we should be aware of?
Sure. I'll address that first, I guess. I think the current drought, as well as the increased awareness and understanding of the climate change impacts that we're facing, while those are crises, I think everyone doing work in this area also sees these as opportunities to really shift the paradigm. So I would say that although there certainly are still challenges in shifting the way that we have managed our water systems, and sort of shifting the idea around that, shifting the way that government agencies as well as stakeholders participate in that, I don't actually see that as a major challenge. What I you know, as someone who works in an organization that works both at the grassroots and at the public policy level, what we actually continue to see is that there are some people within Los Angeles that certainly understand that they can make a difference. But there is still a lot of apathy out there in terms of, you know, believing that the actions that one person or one household takes will be a drop in the bucket, so to speak. So I think for us, the challenge continues to be that. There's still, I think, a notion that somebody out there will fix it. And it's not necessarily me who's going to be doing it, right? I think that's a notion that continues, and we hope to be able to break through that with the current drought.
That makes sense. How about you, Regina?
Gosh, Edith, I'd have to agree with you. The apathy is really high. At the same time, I'd say another major barrier that we find quite a bit is the actual implementation or the knowledge base of the consistency of the contractor. The actual work being done when it is done is pretty low as far as standards, consistency. Even when you do get past the apathy and you get an actual install to occur, when you go up and check on that system, the quality control and consistency of our standards is pretty poor. And even finding contractors who do know how to do adaptive management in the field and make the right choices it's pretty low. And so we need education on that level as well to make sure we're putting in the correct type of rainwater system or stormwater system or other alternative LID or BMP type treatment, and that we're not wasting homeowners' monies and we're also being effective. The second barrier, which I run into a lot, is just data. We don't have any data, and if whether it's from geotechnical data, well data, of other informational data, which maybe environmental health does have, maybe they do not have and can get, we could create better systems like the ones Edith is talking about, having a more community-based integrated systems if there was more data housed and accessible.
Great. And Regina, what about on the regulatory side? I mean, you're out there in the field implementing these technologies, and approaches all the time. Has that been a big barrier in advancing your work, or has that been more of a smooth flowing area?
Well, we typically know what the barriers are, so you design around them. At the same time, Title 22 is a financial barrier for most clients. So we do run into quite a bit of Title 22 as far as that as a true barrier. It just financially doesn't work out. For the return on investment doesn't work for most clients.
Right. Edith, at Tree People, you've been collaborating with the Los Angeles Department of Public Health on guidelines for outdoor non-potable use of rainwater. That's a piece of work that you did together. And it sounds like now you're extending that to indoor non-potable use. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about why you think that's important and what that process is like.
Sure. So I'll tell you a little bit about the history. So in 2010 and 2011, a coalition of interested parties collaborated with Angelo and his colleagues to create guidelines for the outdoor use of rainwater and stormwater in Los Angeles County, and this was outdoor use. The coalition included county and city departments, as well as representatives from the California Department of Public Health, the City of Santa Monica, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, as well as 2 NGOs, Tree People and Heal the Bay. And I believe the slide is up now showing you the first page of those guidelines that were developed. So prior to the development of these guidelines, legality of using rainwater and stormwater in LA County was sort of a gray area. It wasn't illegal per se, but there was not really a clear path for using those water sources in a way that was both legal and protective of public health. So those guidelines were passed just as we were entering into the current drought. And since 2011, the drought combined with long-term climate projections have only heightened the need for Southern California to become smarter about water use, and we've already heard that this morning. So a few months ago, several of the members that were together for that first round with the County Department of Public Health came back together to propose we revisit the outdoor non-potable water use guidelines. And as you framed it correctly, Katie, we wanted to expand them to also include this, indoor use as a way of addressing this new reality of water scarcity. So the City of Los Angeles and Santa Monica, as well as Tree People, Heal the Bay, and the Natural Resources Defense Council are working hand in hand currently with County Department of Public Health to create guidelines for that indoor use of non-potable water. And this will cover rainwater, stormwater, urban runoff, and condensate. And the uses that we envision being able to use that for include toilet flushing and laundry, as well as some industrial or manufacturing types of uses for processes of that sort. So we are very much in the thick of it right now, but we're delighted that Angelo and his staff are eager to see those new guidelines through, and those guidelines will in turn allow residents, businesses, and municipalities throughout the County of Los Angeles to use this water. And we anticipate that the guidelines should be ready to go in the coming weeks. In terms of what motivates us, I just want to mention in Southern California in particular, because we have a Mediterranean climate that is semi-arid in nature, where we have 4 to 6 months of no rain. The use of that kind of rainwater, stormwater outdoors is fairly limiting during those months because you run out of the source pretty quickly. So being able to switch that indoors, we know will actually improve the return on investment for those kinds of systems, because you can use they're low volume, frequent uses indoors versus very large volume uses outdoors.
Great. Well, that's really exciting. And I was wondering if we could maybe just take a moment to tap our participants on the call today. I'm curious if this is common, these kind of guidelines. And so we're going to just go ahead and launch a poll to see if there are other areas with guidelines for a permitting process for the use of rainwater or stormwater. So whether that be outdoor or indoor, just any guidelines or permitting process. So if everybody could take a moment and let us know, it would be helpful to get a sense of, you know, at this point in time, is this something that is an outlier? Is it more common? And see where we're at. So please just take a moment here. Okay, maybe about 10 more seconds. Okay, Holly, would you mind going ahead and launching the results of that poll? Okay, so we do have some other jurisdictions with some permitting process here or guidelines. And then it doesn't look like it's something that is terribly widespread, but maybe a little bit later on the call, it would be great to hear from those of you who do have these about your experience, or also from those of you who don't. Is that something you're interested in, and what would be helpful in terms of supporting that moving forward? And we'll just launch a second poll here really quickly. You know, and I doubt very many people are going to be answering this, but for those of you who did say yes, are the guidelines for indoor, outdoor use? So if you could just answer indoor, outdoor, or both. We'll do this one really quickly. So 10 more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and launch that. Both. Oh, interesting. So there are people on the call who have guidelines for indoor use. So we'll come back to that in a little bit, but it would be great to hear about that and see what that looks like in other areas. So we've just got about a few more minutes here until we're going to open up the conversation to everybody on the call. So just a reminder to everyone to have your questions and comments ready to go. Regina, I know you've also worked on non-potable indoor use. Do you have any quick points that you'd like to add?
No, I think Edith really covered that return on investment, the tank drawdown of those small frequent uses during active rainfall is what's the most important to get us on that ROI.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
Great. And Regina, you've been doing some work with the Decentralized Water Policy Council, which is a new body. Could you just maybe tell us what that organization is and how you're working with environmental health?
Yeah, it's an exciting group of people that are all looked to come up really with three main goals. And that's one is to come up with policy change through a water action plan, all based around decentralized systems. Secondly, is we want to create a template, a policy template to help advise our policies. And secondly, it is to provide education for regulators on on-site water resources. So we really extend an invitation for anyone to get involved, whether it be through technical review, advisement, or active participation. There is a website that I will share, and there's also a video I think we will share a link to as well.
Yeah, we'll share a link to that video. And Edith has also shared a 5-minute video from Tree People, which is a really wonderful summary of how trees and urban places can be used to effectively manage water in a better way. So we'll be sharing those and really encourage everybody to take some more time with those materials after the call. Those will go out within the next couple of days. And Edith, you and Tree People are also working on the new LA Stormwater Master Plan. We don't have a whole lot of time to go into that, but maybe we could just pull up the slide on that, Holly, and Edith, you could just maybe make a quick comment on that, and you know, see if if you think this is something that could be applicable in other places as well as an organizing tool around water.
Absolutely. So the city of Los Angeles currently imports 89% of its water, and as we heard from Angelo, this is not a sustainable concept. And we're seeing it very, hard-hitting reality is here at this point. So Tree People has served as a pro bono advisor to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which serves 4 million customers for the last few years, we've been at this capacity. And as part of that partnership, we worked with the department to initiate and create the first ever stormwater capture master plan in the city of Los Angeles, which is very near completion, very, very close. In fact, it's going to their board in the next couple of weeks. So the concept behind this was really, we know what the reality is. We can't continue to do this. We import the vast majority of our water, but nobody really had an idea of what the potential was for stormwater to supply, essentially to be a substantial part of our portfolio in the city of Los Angeles. So as you can see on the slide there, the first sort of quarter at the top there shows you what the current imports are. But through the Stormwater Capture Master Plan, we identified that the potential of stormwater to supply LA's water demand, if we maximize capture and address some of the, I guess, anthropogenic issues, such as cleanup of the groundwater basins, we could satisfy 30 to 45% of current demand. That's current demand. So these percentages could grow if demand continues to drop due to conservation efforts. So we're excited that the plan is nearly over, and we are looking forward to implementation.
Great. Well, it'll be great to hear more, and we'd love to help people who are on the call today continue to stay up to speed, both on this effort and others you're working on, as well as Regina, I know you and the Decentralized Water Policy Council are pulling together some policy recommendations and information for environmental health around stormwater, rainwater capture. So we'd love to keep getting that out. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the lines for everybody so we can all talk together. And just as a segue, Regina and Edith, I'd love to ask you just a quick comment on what you would like to see from the environmental health community in terms of supporting alternative rainwater and stormwater capture.
Thank you. I know that the number one, again, consistency standards, but outreach and education. Really getting that consistency and of standards and education out there to the public and to the contracting community, and even to your REHSs, to your inspectors, so that we just build better quality control systems.
Yeah.
Thank you, Edith.
I'll add to that. I think I agree with that. I will say model yourselves after the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, because Angelo and his team have been extremely receptive and are very willing partners in this. They really see the value of expanding our water sources beyond where they are today.
So I just have been hearing a little bit of feedback there. Edith, I'm going to take you off mute so you can finish up, but I did put everybody else back on mute, and I would ask you, I'd love to really, again, encourage some discussion. So please raise your hand using the raise hand feature, and I'll unmute you, and we can continue this conversation that way. Sorry, Edith, to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just sharing that our experience with the LA County Department of Public Health has been very positive, because there's a real willingness to explore the issues within the context of today's urgencies. And there's I think a belief that we can do so safely. So we've really had an extremely collaborative experience where the existing data speaks for itself and helps us make the decisions that we need to make.
Okay, great. So again, just opening it up the conversation, everybody, we'd love to hear from you. And I just want to throw out a guiding question for our conversation too, which is, what do those of you in the environmental health community need and want in order to actively support these kind of alternative water solutions and ongoing innovation? So what kind of support would you like and need? So just encourage anyone to raise their hand. Angelo, do you have anything you want to throw in there after hearing from
Am I off mute? Can you hear me? Okay, great.
I can.
The only thing that I wanted to do, and by the way, where is the hand-raising thing on this column? Is it on the right-hand side?
Great question. It's on the left-hand side of everybody's control panel.
Oh, okay, great.
Holly's going to just show again here.
Yeah, I see.
You can see here on the slide. Yeah.
Right, wonderful. Thank you.
And if you're feeling shy, you can throw in questions in the box by typing them in as well.
Okay, great.
Or comments.
But what I really wanted to encourage our environmental health colleagues at this point is to think about either what it is that we need to support this broader goal, this broader public health mission is how we define it. And if that doesn't come easily, then what are the concerns that many of us have in this area? Because I think that's vital too. And if we can just be real open about what the concerns are, I think it's a little bit easier for us to work with the other stakeholders, including the nonprofits that are really driving behind much of these reforms. So I would just encourage those that are on the line from environmental health jurisdictions to either express what it is that we need or to simply indicate what our concerns are, because we are regulators and we've been focused like laser light for decades. Conventionally we've been focused on protecting the resource, and anything that changes that paradigm, however beneficial, there still are concerns with how it's being implemented. So I just see if we have anybody out there that's willing to raise their hands.
There must not be any concerns.
Well, that would be wonderful. That's a great suggestion. It might be good, until we do see a hand raise go up, it might be good for me. I'm going to share my my webcam again here, but it might be good for me to simply indicate that we do have this dual role in the health department, and we really get the need to protect the water. I think that both Edith and Regina had placed emphasis on making sure that we have standards and that those standards are consistently enforced. I can tell you that one of the barriers to local jurisdictions becoming involved is that our programs are typically regulatory and funded by the fees that we impose on the regulated community. So it's not always an obligation that we see head on to expand alternative water use. I think what we've been appealing to among the environmental health community is the need to support what we're defining as a broader public health mission, because if we don't have alternative water supplies, then we will not have adequate water. And we all know, those of us in public health know, that we can't even maintain good health within our communities if we don't have an adequate supply of water. So this dual role of having both quality water and protecting it, but on a parallel path, doing everything we can to remove the barriers so that those that are coming to us and trying to develop alternative water, we've got to find ourselves to either get out of the way or prescribe the necessary precautions so that this water can be developed. But what we'd really like to see, and I'm not alone here, there are several of our directors that have been making this point, we'd really like to see us become strong advocates for alternative water use.
Great. Thank you, Angelo. And I also just want to, as a sidebar, really encourage the poll respondents who shared that they have an indoor non-potable use of rainwater guideline or policy to raise your hand, and we'd love to hear a little bit from you about what that was like and how that's working. So I'll encourage that. And meanwhile, there are a couple of questions coming in here. One, thanking the speakers and Angelo, appreciating the collaborative interaction and the need for consistent standards. And the question being, from a watershed perspective, is there more support or efforts directed at forest management as a component of water management? Is that something you're seeing out there?
Can you repeat that again? I think you cut out a little bit.
Sure. From a watershed perspective, is there more support or more efforts directed at forest management as a component of water management?
Sure. Yeah, I would say that there's a good understanding at this stage that watershed management largely begins up in the forest. So certainly in the city of Los Angeles and in the county, the Angeles National Forest, which is north of us, and the higher elevations north of us, was actually originally established because there was even back then an understanding that that management of that watershed and of that forest was integral to protecting local water quality and quantity. So I would say that that's an understanding that's been present for a long time. There are challenges today in terms of urban forest management and wildland forest management. We're seeing a tremendous mortality rate out there with not only forests north of Los Angeles and around Los Angeles, but also within the urban area. So while there is an understanding of the linkages, the challenges are very real today. Even our native plants that are accustomed to long periods of dry weather are beginning to die. So the response needs to be swift, but the understanding certainly is there. I think it's more of a matter of finding the resources to respond.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then there's another question from somebody who's taking measures on a personal level at home, such as buckets in the shower, buckets in the kitchen sink, the old adage, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. And this person's asking that, they'd like to advance rainwater capture in their household. So what is the best way to go about doing that? Where would somebody go to find rain barrels, etc.?
Regina,
do you want to start with that one?
Sure. So as far as I would go to your local county and ask for what their qualifications are and standards, and first, and see what can and cannot be permitted and used. And then secondly, I'd say call or look up ARCSA, which is the American Rainwater Catchment Association, who has a wide body of contractors who do install and also can give recommendations on how to do the calculations for your roof and proper placement, mosquito and pollution contaminant control on that installation if you do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And no other hands up at the moment. So Edith, I'd love to just ask you, you just went fairly recently on a delegation to Australia to learn about how they're managing water and some of their regulatory approaches as well. Can you maybe just share one or two little tidbits from that experience?
Sure, yeah.
That you think could be applied here?
Sure. Yeah, so you framed it well. We've been looking down under for a few years now because Australia has experienced some of the most severe impacts of drought and climate change that we've seen around the world, really. And the similarities between Australian lifestyles, climate, et cetera, are not, there's a lot of similarities with American lifestyles and with the climate and so on. So we, and I should say that we have a bit of a bias because Andy Lipkiss is married to an Aussie. So he started us looking down there. And in 2012, we embarked on a best practices exchange program between government, research, and community organizations throughout Australia. And we really went there to understand what experiences they had learned and, had and what lessons they had learned through their millennium drought, which was a drought that lasted from the late 1990s to about 2010, and then it broke with tremendous flooding. So in the fall of last year, as you pointed out, we took a delegation of policymakers from California to see the remarkable changes that had been made in Australia. And the themes that emerged, a couple of the themes that emerged that we thought were most transferable to our situation here is, first of all, they were very adamant about using the right water for the right job. So there's this concept that they call fit for purpose. So use different water sources for designated purposes. There's no reason to be treating water to, beyond the level that it needs to for its end use. There's no reason why we should be flushing our toilets with drinking water. And in Australia, they've really operationalized this concept in a number of ways, in a regulatory manner, certainly in development standards and so on. Another theme was that there's a tremendous culture of rainwater harvesting, and in fact, if you wouldn't mind bringing up, I did have a slide about that. That's pretty remarkable. So there's a very vibrant culture of rainwater harvesting, but even in a country where that already existed prior to the drought, during the drought, the growth was pretty remarkable. So these are the 6 states in Australia. It's split up into states just like the United States. On the left is New South Wales. The capital of that state is Sydney. They experienced between 2007 and 2013 a growth from about 10% to about 20%. Victoria, next to it, Melbourne is the capital there, 12 to 32% in the 6 or 7 year period. Queensland, where Brisbane is located, a pretty remarkable growth from about 18% of households owning rainwater harvesting tanks to about 47%.
Wow. Edith, I'm just going to interrupt. Sorry about that. That's an amazing shift. And I know there's a lot more information about that in your report about your Australia experience. And so we're going to be getting that out to the audience as well as some of these other materials. But just being mindful of time, I'd love to just put a bookmark in it there and turn the floor over to you, Angelo, to wrap us up.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention, and it was really some really poignant points that were made by our panelists. But I think among the barriers we're facing and that were raised by our panelists was apathy. And the challenge for us is really how to express the power of one. And the fact that this is something that not only we in the government who hold some of the keys to allowing this to go forward and removing barriers, but the individuals have to see their role in this as well. It's not hopeless, and we've got to help educate them on the power of one, so to speak. I think also the important point that was made on the need for consistency in the standards and enforcement. And if I was to take away 2 important messages, those were the ones that I heard raised today. I think we have an enormous task here, all of us. We have an enormous task of working together and collaborating among each of the stakeholders to ensure that we can successfully address this crisis. And again, let's think of it, it is a water crisis, but our problems go well beyond our water system. They extend to our energy production. And, we don't need to go on with this group, but the fact of the matter is that we've got to be much more sustainable in what we're doing. Yeah. I wanted to thank our panelists. I thought they were extremely articulate, but also very knowledgeable. And from my direct knowledge of both of them, they are really out there walking the talk and advocating on behalf of the public interest, which is what we all need to be thinking more of.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you both, Edith and Regina, for being on today. We're going to be wrapping up now. I just wanted to remind everybody about our upcoming webinars in this series for environmental health. And if you didn't catch last month, Angelo and his colleague Carlos Borja did a really wonderful job framing these issues and setting the tone. So that's available on our website. I encourage you to see it if you haven't. These are our upcoming webinars, August, September, October, November. We'll be getting into some other aspects of water reuse. Encourage you to join us, and please keep an eye out for an email from us within the coming days with some more resources from today's webinar and other great information. So take a look, and thank you so much for being on with us today. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.